Leaders' Questions. Thanks to Cisco Systems and Exertis Ireland, providing a secure, intelligent platform for digital business. Visit intelligentIT.ie.
This podcast is brought to you by Cisco Systems and Exertis Ireland. You need to be moving your network to a Cisco SD-WAN network. Don't believe us? We can optimize your user experience of Microsoft Office 365 with up to 40% faster performance. Visit intelligentIT.ie. All right, you're very welcome along to another Leaders' Questions with Stuart Lancaster. Our guest this week is the Air CEO, Carolan Lennon. Good afternoon to you. Carolan, how are you?
Hi, good, Ger, thank you.
So this is a slightly different one from some of the ones that we've done up to this point, Stuart. Carolan is head of a much bigger organisation than any of the kind of conversations we've had so far. What is it particularly about the leadership of the big organisations that interests you?
Well, it's more. I met Carolan when I arrived in Dublin last year, and obviously since then, she's then been promoted into a new role, which obviously I'm quite interested in. And the previous people who we've spoken to, I've always worked with or had a relationship with, whereas Carolan I've not worked with. So I'm interested to know Carolan's story to rise to become the leader of such a big organisation. What inspired her? What's her background, and what we can all learn from her journey.
Yeah, so I've seen you talk about leadership before and loads of different strands of it. Do you have a defined philosophy of leadership?
I think it would be hard to say that it's defined, but there's a few for me, there's a few principles. It's, the way you talk about, sometimes people say about, leading from the front. I actually don't believe in that. I think really good leaders actually lead from the back, and they lead from the back because they have a view of the team, and really it is all about the team. And I think it's about, pulling a group of people together, getting them motivated behind a particular objective, and, and helping and guiding them on that journey. Now, it doesn't mean as a leader you don't have an opinion, but it isn't about you being out there in front. I think it is about that corralling and that moving forward of that collective, and that idea that the sum of the parts, is better than all those individual contributions.
And when your opinion is completely at odds with the opinion of the group?
Yeah, no, I'm very happy for people to disagree with me. In fact, I would encourage that. I don't always have all the right ideas. I like healthy debate, but if I have to call it, I call it. And, as you get more senior, and actually that is the beauty of being the leader, that you can get to call it. But, but I think healthy contributions for everyone and different views are absolutely paramount for, good team performance.
Yeah, just on that, what do you do when your team are like, no, we actually fully disagree with you on this one? I'm sure it happens rarely, but it happens sometimes.
No, it's collaborative. It's always collaborative. You've got to make sure, the art of leadership obviously is trying to influence as well, perception and the journey that you're going to go. So, I agree with Carolan. The only way you can really create a healthy debate is to create trust, first of all. And I think if you create trust with the playing group, and you then have done your work and you've made your point about the route we want to go down, then it's about influencing them and trying to get them on board with what your ideas are, and then from there, making sure that when we agree or disagree, when we're in the privacy of a team room, whatever, we all walk out together in agreement of the route we're going to go down. So, obviously for me now, I'm not in the number one position. So, Leo makes the final call, and my job as a supporter of Leo as the head coach is to make his decisions work. Yet when I was the head coach of England, I would make the decision, and I needed, Andy Farrell and Graham Rowntree, etc., to make help my decisions work. So, yeah, I mean, it's part and parcel of being the leader. There's a great quote, isn't there, about leaders are paid to make a decision, and people managers are happy to give a position but never have to make the decision. There's a big difference.
Yeah. Which is more enjoyable?
Being the leader. Being the leader, but it's tough. It's lonely, and it's going from number 2 to number 1 is a big step, and I don't think people really appreciate it until you've actually done it.
Yeah.
And then when you've done it, and then you're the one responsible for the decisions and the accountability of the decision, and some of the tough decisions that you have to make, it is tough and it's quite lonely as well. And that's why some people are quite happy being managers, and there's no problem with that. But I think if you want to try and drive something and create a change or inspire people towards a vision for the future, then you need to be in that leadership position.
Yeah. You've literally just experienced that. I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily number 2 to number 1, but something similar. You've been promoted from within to the top job.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's fantastic to be in that decision-making spot. Spent a lot of my career and, had senior roles in Air. And it's like Stuart said, it's all about trying to influence a decision and, bringing my sort of position or the area that I represent's position to the table and trying to drive that kind of influence. But today, to be in the spot where you get to call it, I find it actually really exciting and quite liberating. It is a bit lonely. This is the first job I've ever had in office, ever. And I kind of look around the office and there's no one else there other than me. And I'm like, who do I talk to? Because I think I used to have people would always say that I have a good handle on what's going on in the organisation, how people are feeling, what's the general vibe. And that's, I think, because I sat out among everybody and I listened to everybody, and people might come over and have a chat with me about something random and you pick something else up. So that's one of the things, being a CEO was maybe a little bit more isolated, and I have to make a real effort now to get out there and, and chat to people and kind of, still engage, because I'd hate to lose that touch with the organisation in terms of what's really going on for people.
Yeah, one of the other pieces of advice that I saw you give people in the past was that you should be involved in things that aren't your job in the company, so that, if there is a social committee or whatever, because then you present a different person to your colleagues, but equally you see them differently, and you just also find out more about how the business works. I
think that's absolutely true, and I think customers are interested in companies not just for the product they sell and how that works and how cheap it is or what price it is. They're also interested more and more in the role that company plays in society. So I think it's really, really important that, a company has kind of a social license to operate, and to do that you have to have active kind of, corporate social responsibility initiatives. And I think everybody needs to get involved in that, because it does open up new avenues. It does make people see in a different light, and it just brings another dimension to your job. And I always say this, I say this to the graduates all the time, through all my involvement over the years in those kind of initiatives, I got to interact with senior people way before my job would have allowed me to. These guys could have been 3 levels above me, but because they were interested in the same kind of initiatives I was, I got to interact with them. And I think that was hugely important to me, developing my network and my relationships in organisations. So I would always say, I always worry about people, even at interview, when they come in and they just have a really narrow focus. I'm always interested in people who have a bit of a broader focus, because I think they bring more and they're up for more, and again, that idea of a leader is, knowing in your heart and soul that what got the organisation to here is not going to take them to there, and that relentlessness about that. And that's because you're looking at different focuses, trying to bring other things in. And I like to see that in people. I worry about people who are very too single-minded, and that narrow focus, I think it limits them.
Can you talk to us a bit about then the stuff that you do yourself to make sure that you aren't just narrowly focused on the single thing?
Well, I suppose I've been in Air for 8 years, and I've had various roles, and but none of the roles would have naturally been the role to lead the CSR agenda for Air. That wasn't. I wasn't HR. I wasn't where it would naturally fit. But when I went into Air, there was no CSR agenda. We had a strong and fantastic relationship with the Special Olympics Ireland, an amazing organisation, but we weren't really doing anything with it. We had no policies on the environment in terms of our footprint. We didn't have policies to let staff take some days for volunteering. What would happen if charities wrote to us? If it landed on my desk, I'd read it, and if I might grab some funds. If it landed on someone else's desk, it might go nowhere. Yeah. So I suppose I set up the CSR strategy team, in Air, and I'm a patron of Special Olympics Ireland, heavily involved in that. But me and my family, we are part of the Air Spectrum, which is our LGBT group. I'm involved with She Leads, which is our female diversity group. So I don't just kind of say, let's get these all set up. I personally get involved in them. I dragged all my family to Pride last year. I dragged them on every year to all the Air runs, running for Special Olympics. I think last year between us all, myself and my husband did a half marathon each. The kids all did 10K, because I kind of want to put my money where my mouth is. But I get 100 times more out of that than I actually put in. And I also get to, again, from Air, I get to interact with people that I wouldn't meet in head office. When we do the run, there's guys from all over the country. When we did Pride, engineers from over the country I've never met came along, and walked with us in Pride. So it just opens your vista, and you get a sense of, what's needed in the organisation and what's working and what's not working.
And who the people are.
Yeah, exactly. And what drives them and what motivates them. And I remember talking to one of the guys the first time he did Pride, and he said, I've worked here 30 years and never, ever thought I'd see Air sponsoring Pride, let alone an Air float and 4 members of the Air senior management team on the float or walking along with the float. And, and to be able to just pick that up, fresh and, just talking to somebody is amazing. You can read that in a report or you can read it in some typed feedback, but it's not the same as engaging with somebody and really sensing what it means to them.
Yeah, so for you, leadership was about getting involved at it's not grassroots level, but actually on a micro level with the initiatives that were actually going to be how the company thinks about itself.
Well, I think it was about having a position and an opinion that these things, as well as like I joined AIR and we went into examinership. I mean, I wrote the consumer plan that was approved by the examiner. That's in the school of what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And coming out of that, we had a plan that was absolutely, when I looked at it, I wasn't worried about the numbers. I was just worried about all the things we had to do to make that plan work. We had to build a fibre network. We had to get 4G spectrum. We had to roll out a network. We had to take 100 million of cost out. We had to, I was thinking, God, you would never plan to do those all in the same 18 months. And realising that's important. And I can do that all day, every day. But also knowing that actually that's not the only thing that's important, because we have to build this organisation. We have to have, highly functioning, motivated organisation when we've done all that. And there are other things that are important there. So I'm going to develop a CSR strategy. I'm going to pull all this stuff together. I'm going to put a team in place because I think it's important and I think it's going to make a difference.
Yeah. I was chatting to Stuart earlier on about this, and it was the identity of the Leinster team or the England team or the Leeds team was always very clear. Everybody was part of that, and either you were in good form or you weren't, and you wanted the same outcome as everybody else, or maybe you were recalcitrant a little bit. But in an organisation with 3,000 people or however many it was originally, how do you stop them just thinking of the company as the man and the check and actually get them engaged? And it sounds like that's
because I think you pick you identify initiatives that are important for their communities, and you show that they're important to you as well, and you show by doing in terms of being in the middle of that. I think that's that's really important, because I think everybody knows how to do their day job, but it has to be. I think it's always feels more motivation to be part of something bigger than that.
The meaningful, and we always talk about the why, but that's kind of come up repeatedly. It's like,
yeah,
why?
It does in every person we've spoken to, and the reason why we're all going to work hard for this team. It's absolutely, for me, the leader's primary responsibility to drive that, develop that, explain it to the people who work for the organisation, so they can put self-interest to one side and put the betterment of the organisation or the cause at the forefront. And then if you do that, then let's say self-interest gets put to one side and everyone drives in the same direction. But it is the leader's responsibility, I think, to articulate that, to drive them towards that. And I remember coming into Leinster and talking about what's our purpose, what we're trying to achieve here, in terms of building one of the top teams in Europe, or the top team in Europe, and striving for the 4-star and for the 5th star, but also having a culture and identity that run deep through Leinster from top to bottom, and we've got the best academy and everything else. And I was very, very lucky to come into a club and an environment that had all that in place. There are, I've been around 12 Premiership clubs in England. I've coached against international teams, and there are very, very few places I've been to that have got that as well aligned as Leinster.
Yeah. It's funny how a lot of people would say CSR is a badge that they use as something, and some people are very cynical about it. Let's pick the thing that's going to get us the most impact. But ultimately, unless you're doing it for meaningful reasons, people are cynical. They see through that. It's like, here's this thing that I'm doing to punch in. But if it is meaningful to you, and if it is something that pockets of the company can get behind and unite behind, then it does really have the power to transform the culture really quickly.
Yeah, I believe that. But I think it can't be a badge. It can't be a label, because otherwise people do see through that. I mean, if you pick on the Special Olympics, because this is a sporting show, and Stuart's background, and they would always say that they're a sporting organisation first and foremost. We have a 33-year relationship with them, and if you look at their stats, they are the best performing of all of the international Special Olympics, movements. Because I suppose the aim of Special Olympics is that everybody with intellectual disability would participate in sport. And I think the world average is 2%, European average is 3%, but in Ireland it's over 30%. So they've done massively well. Now, I would say that, AIR's involvement with them, and the fact that we give them long-term, funding, we do all their IT stuff, we raise money for them every year, we sponsor now the national games that are coming up. I'm volunteering out in Santry. That is definitely, and Matt would say that himself, that has contributed to that success. So that's not a badge, that's not something we've grabbed because it's cool, or that's right, and Air staff take a lot of pride in that, and it's important to them that Air is involved in those kind of things.
Yeah, even when the organisation's going through great periods of change, that's when
you need it more than all. Then I think,
but it could be very easy to go, okay, well, I'm just going to look at this report here and detail the stuff that we've got in the next 18 months, and we'll come back to that a little bit later. So making the brain space to do that.
Yeah, but I think that's I think you need to recognise in tough times, people need those things more than ever, and it kind of keeps everyone pointing due north or wherever you need to go to, so we would have done all that stuff through the post-examinership and getting ourselves back on onto the kind of even ground we're on now, and I think that it was essential to have both of those.
When did you realise that was important? How did you learn that?
I don't know. I mean, I have been involved, since I graduated and started working, I was involved in my first job in Church in General. I was on the social committee, so it's not like I read a book and said, oh my God, starting your first job, you need to get in there and start, but intuitively I wanted to be involved, and I wanted to be involved in, in lots of things, and maybe be in the heart and soul of the company a little bit. So I started there, and I've always kept it going, and where it hasn't existed, I've set it up.
Were you in societies in college, that kind of stuff?
Not so much. I think college was different for me because I grew up on Coolock on the north side, and there's no history of going to college in my family. So I was the first one to go. I was 17. I didn't know which way was up. I really didn't. I did computer science because it was Ireland in the 80s, and I thought I'd get a job because there's definitely a bit of pragmatist in me as well. I had no money. I cycle over. So, and I had a boyfriend at home in Coolock. So I think I didn't really embrace that whole, like I did when I did my MBA, but not at that time. I know it sounds like, it makes it sound like an old crumbly, but it was like university's wasted on the young, because it was wasted a little bit. I mean, I had a degree out of it, and it started me on my job, but it didn't,
If you could go back now, you'd do it differently.
I would do it differently.
A bit more crack.
Yeah, well, I definitely would. I'd hopefully have a bit more money as well, which would have been good. But it was different. So it came when I started my job, my first job out of college. And I did get a job, so it kind of was a bit right. I did get a job in the 80s in Ireland with my IT degree, and then I started getting involved in all those kind of things.
Yeah, when was your leadership sense awakened?
So I at school I gravitated to leadership positions. I mean, I wasn't an A-star student by any stretch of imagination, and I had some ups and downs, and probably around 16, 17, as I guess most teenage boys, got myself in a bit of trouble with one or two things. Nothing too bad. Sure, don't worry.
Go on.
Raising your eyebrows. No. It wasn't anything bad particularly. But anyway, I ended up becoming the captain of the rugby team, and there was a head of school position, and it was a boarding school, and I had responsibility for running the sort of school prefect system, who had to set the chairs out, and organisational stuff that I learnt there. I went to teacher training college after my sports science degree, and I was taught some great skills on communication and leadership by those lecturers in teacher training. And then during my 20s, obviously I was teaching, and I was gravitating up to deputy head of year, that type of thing, as well as teaching PE. But I reckon, I know exactly when it was the turning point. So it was on instinct until I was 32, and then I was invited onto a level 5 leadership course. So I'd done my level 1, 2, 3 and 4 in rugby, and this level 5 was for the international coaches really, and there were 10 places, and there were 12 places, sorry, and 10 people were already on it, and the last 2 went out for application. So everyone applied, and anyway I managed to get down to the last 5 and got down to the last 2, and I got on the course, and it was at Ashridge Business School. And the course was less about tactical, or the physiology of rugby, or the conditioning or everything else. It was about leadership and management, and it was that point that really began to open my eyes to the theory behind leadership and how to become a better leader, etc., etc. And it opened some, I did some personality profiles, so more self-aware, and some books to read, some people to listen to, and that sort of opened the door, and I just pushed the door open from then on, and that coincided with running the academy. So it was running my own little team, building my own team when I was sort of early 30s. And then the head coach resigned at Leeds, and I took his job at 35. And then I was in charge of a far bigger team. And then we got promoted to the Premiership, and suddenly I was in the big boys league at 35. And I would say that was the moment, really. But obviously there's lots of moments in that journey.
Yeah, you kind of you build on the scaffolding on the way up.
Yeah, and it was great though, because it gave me let's say the theory behind the practice, and then gradually the more I read this book, then I moved to that book, and then I would contact someone and talk about leadership, and then just through experiences of joining the rugby union and dealing with boards and finance and all that sort of stuff, and then suddenly becoming the head coach, and you're dealing with the media and commercial partners, and so it just grew. I still that's why I'm fascinated in leadership now. I'm fascinated in Carolan's story, to go from a school on the north side that probably where no one goes to, university, and what you did, and then how you got to where you are now. I mean, what happened in after the first job? How have you progressed as a leader, and what have been the lessons you've learned along the way?
Well, it's interesting. So I did my degree, as I said, in IT, went into my first job in financial services, and got involved in, the sort of social and community kind of activities in that organisation, and probably excelled at those, and did okay in the job, but, tottering along, not doing too badly. And then, I was doing it for a number of years, and it was a technical job, so all my kind of customers were technical people, technical program for him, or, database updates for her, or whatever. And then we were launching this product. It was the first time, I don't really remember, a time when everyone bought their insurance through brokers. And suddenly we were going to do this direct, where people could, and I was the business analyst on it. And that was the first time I'd ever been involved in anything where the customer was a person on the street who actually would decide whether they wanted to buy this or not, or whether they'd leave their broker that they've had for 20 years. And I was really fascinated by that. Who's going to buy it? Is Stuart going to buy it? Is Jerry going to buy it? Where are they going to come from? Are women going to buy it? Are men going to buy it? Why? What's... And I said, I've been doing the wrong thing. I've been working, with databases and programs, but I've never been dealing with customers and what they like and what they don't like. But the company I was in at the time had no history at all of, moving people. If you were an IT person, you're an IT person. They wouldn't give you a chance in marketing or, move you into finance or whatever. So, and I had no finance background. All through school and into my degree had been kind of maths and sciences and all that sort of stuff. So I thought, if I really want to do this, and I think I do because I feel really motivated by it, I'm going to have to educate myself. I'm going to have to add something to my... So I gave up my job, much to my mother's absolute horror. Because myself and my partner, husband now, but partner then, had just bought an apartment, first mortgage we ever had, and gave up my job. I went back to Trinity full-time to do an MBA, and I absolutely loved it. Completely different scenario than the UCD scenario.
Are you still in your 20s at this stage?
Yeah, late 20s. Right. Yeah, and I just really loved it. And I love Trinity. I walk under those arches and I just feel motivated. I still do when I walk under there. But I was, a bit more grown up, had a bit of money, lived in town. Yeah. It was class. A different world. It was class, absolutely class. It was great. But the thing about that, why I picked that course, I'd done my undergraduate in UCD was because there was a big company project part of it where you worked in teams and they would match you with a company and you do a whole market analysis on them, a company analysis, and come up with a recommendation. And the team I was in, we actually won that company project. But that's, so what I learned, I learned that I was finally in the spot where it just kind of ticked all my boxes. And B, so we'd all paid to do this MBA, and it was pretty pricey at the time. Yeah. Well, I paid myself, some of them, their parents had paid, but everyone had handed over cold hard cash. So, so there's no boss, and there's no boss in the teams, and you've got to get a lot done. And we had Irish people, and we had international people, and we had men and women, all different personalities. And that was challenging, because that's the first time I'd worked in a structure where there was nobody at the end who'd say, we're doing it this way. Yeah. And I found actually I was pretty good at, managing, manoeuvring, and getting us all to point, in the one direction. And that idea of, and I know I'm good at it now, and it started to develop there. I'm very good at influence people, even if they don't work for me. I don't have to be your boss to get you to do something for me, usually. Yeah. So I saw that emerging in terms of, a skill. I had a great boss in there before he said, you're so good at getting people who don't work for you. He said, I can't even get people who do work for me to do stuff for me. But, realising that you have the skill to kind of get people set up around a common objective and influence them to kind of move in the same direction. I think that was when it suddenly dawned on me, and honestly, my career that was kind of, trundling along, when I came out of there, moved into telecoms, into much more commercial roles, it went like that. So that idea that, match yourself with the right thing, with your right skills, and play to your strengths. And, the progress was exponential.
What quality do you think that is that you that you tapped into to create that sense of direction for the people on the? Is it enthusiasm? Is it a vision for where you're going to go? Is it just your sheer force of personality?
So I think there's a lot of I have a lot of energy, and if I get convinced that this is the right thing to do, I think it's hard if I'm interacting with you not to get bought into that. I am good at relating to people and understanding where so I don't have to work with a team of people that are like me. In fact, a lot of people I work with aren't like me at all. But I think they tap into that energy, but I then tap into them in terms of where they're coming from and how they like to work and how they like to operate. And I think I started realising at that MBA, and then subsequent to that I was good at that, that I could tune into people, potentially get the best out of them.
So it wasn't actually the MBA, it wasn't the skills of the MBA, it was actually the interaction with the people on the course.
Yes,
that was the most valuable.
Where there was no hierarchy really, and it just, it had to be about, and it's
how does it work, a full-time MBA? Is you literally in there Monday to Friday?
Started in September and finished in August, and you're literally in there, you're in there all the time, and working together, and and no, as I said, no hierarchy. So it is all about influence. My kids, if they ever listen to this, they always say, that's Spider-Man, with great powers comes great responsibilities. But it's that idea of, using that power positively, for good, in terms of, around a common objective or moving everyone forward and everyone feeling sort of part of it.
Yeah.
I think what the MBA gave me was, this is the right industry for me, these are the right roles I should be doing, but the interaction with that team taught me that, I can do this and I can move people in the right direction.
This podcast brought to you by Cisco Systems and Exertis Ireland. You need to be moving your network to a Cisco SD1 network. Don't believe us? Over 50% of business traffic is in the cloud. Visit intelligentIT.ie. So, is that a skill that you learn to practice on? Is that somebody that you actually focus on, or is it actually just something that you think? I guess it's the difference between an innate skill or something that you can coach and teach.
So I think I realised it was an innate skill during the MBA, and then I saw the value of it, and now I'm more aware of it, and I try to use it, and I suppose I've honed it, and I'm probably a bit better at it than I was then. Yeah. Maybe a little bit more sophisticated in the way I might use it, but I know it's there, and I know how to do it, and I would call on it. We've I'm day 13 as CEO of Air. We've a whole new team around the table. All promoted from within. Which is what I really wanted to do. 50-50 men and women, which is what I really wanted to do. And they're fantastic. But I know now it's my job, and I know I can do that to get us aligned and moving forward in the right direction, despite whatever challenges, and some of them will be very big, that we have in front of us. Yeah.
Did you practice it? How did you actually get better at it and more sophisticated? That level of sophistication.
I suppose because you get opportunity. It's a bit of a circle. So I knew. So I come out of my MBA. I think I've got some good stuff going on here. I now know what I want to do. I get it as a result. I say, right, I'm not going back to financial services, and I'm not going back to IT, because I've made the break now, and I know whatever. But of course, I have to pay the mortgage. Those little facts. And I went for a job at Aircell, and that was my dream job. So this ticked every box. It wasn't financial services, it was telecoms, it was flying. It was going to be great. And that's the one I wanted. And I got down to the last two, and I got the call to say you didn't get it. And so I had to take my next best job, which ticked one box. It wasn't an IT role, but it was back in financial services. And a year later, I got a call from Aircell to say, actually, when we said you were close, that was the truth, because I thought, here's a recruiter saying it was really close, you're down to the last two, maybe not. It was really close, and the guy who got it has gone back to Bank of Ireland, and rather than go out to the market again, are you still interested?
Right.
So my inner voice said, you didn't want me last year. And then my sensible voice said, and my husband said, you would have taken someone's arm off for that job last year. So then I found myself where I had an opportunity then to start using those skills. And I went into Aircell at a time where mobile was flying. So everybody wanted a mobile phone. It was like prepaid had just been launched.
Yeah.
So
we're 97, 98 territory.
Yes, 98, just at the end of it, 98. And so selling them was easy because everyone wanted them. But what wasn't easy was saying, well, Stuart spends €10 a month topping up, and Jer actually spells 1,000 because whatever, and they had no sense. If you were a corporate, they knew you, other than that they didn't know anything.
Yeah.
So I got to set all that up, all that insight in terms of who's doing what, who should get an upgrade, whatever, and I had to build that team. So that was my first chance outside of my Trinity. Now I kind of was the boss, but it was my first chance to kind of use those skills and get that new team set up. And that was a brilliant time because we had budgets, because sales were bringing in loads of money. People thought we were geniuses. We'd do a model. We'd come back and say, give one to him, don't give one to him. Everyone thought we were fantastic. But it was a great way to kind of hone those skills because you're starting from scratch. You're building something new. You're hiring people. You're bringing people in from other parts of the company. And, that was a team of 15. And then I got the strategic marketing job. I had a team of 25. Then I had a baby and I came back and I got promoted. I had a team of 50. So, it starts to, you start to prove yourself in those roles. You're using that skill, and then you get a bigger opportunity. And like Stuart said, going to Leeds and whatever. So, and every time I think you're honing, the things that you bring in and your skills.
When you say that your team isn't, they're not necessarily similar to you, at some point you need to recognise that there's a trait here where the 10 people who I can influence today, I need them to then go off and influence 10 people, and that needs to ripple out. So is there something that you look for when you're recruiting, that you see a little bit of yourself in people who will be able to carry your message to a wider audience?
The biggest thing I look for is, do I trust them? And is that the trust between us in terms of to have an honest exchange of views, to disagree on things, to agree. That's the biggest thing I look for. Someone was recommending, because I'm a complete optimist, but someone was recommending a book to me the other day, Only the Paranoid Survive. And I've ordered it for one of my team because he sees doom and gloom around every corner. We couldn't be more different. But I trust him completely, and we have very honest. So I don't look for that trait in myself. But I know I trust him, and if he says I'm bought in, I know what we're doing, I'm going to go and make that happen in his way. It's different to my way, which is fine, that he will go and do that. So for me, I think trust is the number one thing. I think out of that, if you have that, you can kind of do anything, without that, I think, I never like to second guess. I like to know if someone's leaving the room, we've had a conversation, that we've had that conversation, and, there's nothing else going on, and they haven't felt I couldn't say it or whatever, or I haven't felt that I couldn't say it.
Yeah. Trust is obviously clearly important in any environment, but making sure that your message is the same message that's getting out, and that kind of...
I think it can be the same message, but it doesn't have to be delivered in the same way,
sure.
And I think that's the important thing, because nobody we don't want step wives or all that, whatever, so I think, that's important. But it's just someone's, you trust them to know they're bought into what we're trying to do here, and they're bought into delivering the message, and they may deliver in a slightly different style than I would deliver it,
It sounds, to go back and not to... it sounds like the strategic marketing job you mentioned, is that the big break? Like getting the first job is great, and the timing is excellent, but actually then being recognised for that and flipping into something bigger.
Yeah, so that's no doubt. So you get to take the MBA and finally use those skills and whatever, and you get to set something up. And in some way, there's always a bit of luck in everything. So what we were setting up, in many ways, wasn't rocket science, but at the time it looked very whatever. And that creates a platform for, we get a new CEO in, and at the time we didn't have a marketing department. We had bits of marketing done everywhere, right. But he's from a marketing background. So he believes we should have a marketing department. He hires a marketing director, an international marketing director, and he says, we have all these roles. And, we've got a head of strategic marketing. I was just back, having had my first son, and I'm looking at these roles going, should I be applying for them? The way your head's a bit, well, should I be applying for them? And I go, actually, I should be. And that's the one with my name on it. And all the work I'd done in setting up CRM or whatever gave me the platform, and I got it. And from then, the next move was marketing director. And I was out on leave, maternity leave with my second son. I only have 3 sons. It's not like I have about 10. It sounds like that. But I was out on maternity leave, and I got a call from my boss, and he said, I know you're not out that long, and I can't give you all the details, but there's an opportunity coming up, and I just want you to know about it. You decide. So I came back early. My husband took paternity leave, and I came back early, and that was the platform. That was my really big break. I became the marketing director in Vodafone Ireland, and I was around the management team then. So then I had a team of over 100, and that was real leadership in terms of you're driving that or whatever.
And at a time when these brands are booming.
Yeah, exactly. And you get to do absolutely, loads. And I got to do what I really wanted to do, which was sponsor Dublin, and then I went to Ayr. So that was bad timing. But lots of platforms for other opportunities, and then you're honing those skills and you're using them, and they're helping you go that next level up.
And do you change as a leader as that goes on, or is it just about getting better at the stuff that you're doing?
I don't think I've changed. It's funny because I rang when I knew I was going to become the Ayr CEO, and it was just announced a while back about designate. I rang some of my close friends that morning before it came out, and this guy I worked with, he worked with me in that first strategic marketing, then marketing team back in Vodafone. And he said, I'm so pleased for you. And what I really love is you're the same person, that you were then. You've had bigger jobs, you've learned more or whatever, but the authentic person that I knew back in whatever, 99 or Dara was born 2001 is the same person I know today and whatever. And for me, that was nice to hear. That's what I think. But maybe you have changed and you don't really know yourself. But it was nice to hear back from him that that's the case.
Authenticity is unbelievably important in a leader.
In a team environment, in a sport environment, players can see it straight away if you're not. And, they don't expect you to get everything right all the time. Credibility. I have this theory about credibility and authenticity that you enter, if it's a scale of 0 to 100, and 0 is you have no authenticity or credibility, and 100 is you are the most authentic and credible person. When you're new to an organisation, you enter at, say, 50, let's call it, because of your track record and what people perceive about you, and you gain and lose points with every interaction that you make. So the trick is obviously to gain more points than you lose. So you're on an upward curve, 60, 70, 80 points. And, I've worked with coaches in the past who've come in with fantastic track records and leaders who've been fantastic track records and trophies in the back pocket, and they've come in, you think, it's going to be great. In my mind, they're this, and they're on 70 or 80 points in your mind, and then suddenly they don't do this that well, and they say they're going to do something and they don't do it. They don't practice what they preach. They don't walk the walk. And gradually they lose points, and eventually they lose credibility, and eventually players in a sporting environment tune out to them, and then eventually there's a players meeting and suddenly the coach is gone. But it works on the flip side. So, if you're working your way up the ladder in an organisation, there's absolutely no doubt that, Carolan can get to be CEO of Air and I can become head coach of England. If you do what you say you're going to do, you're honest, you're inspiring, you are forward-thinking and planning, and you are authentic, and you don't change your personality. I'm 100% different from Eddie Jones, as an example, or I'll be very different from Joe Schmidt, or I'll be very different from Andy Farrell, or whatever. And I like to think that if you asked my school friends from when I was 18 and my university friends, did I change from the person they knew when I became the England coach? They would say no. The perception of you changes. And that's the art, I think, is to make sure that you don't allow the perception, particularly in my world where the media can create the perception that it doesn't become reality, and you've got to fight against that, because the perception about me grew in England about, I'm sort of head teacher type and very serious and studious because I never smile when the camera's on me. But actually, they don't know the real you. Yeah. But that's a hard one to control.
You can't control it. Learning to live with not controlling it.
Yeah, and certainly, well, this, because obviously in the sporting world, you know how we had the conversation before, didn't we, about, the perception is this, and then this media outlet runs it, and suddenly perception becomes reality. Yeah. It's very, very hard to stop that when you're on your own. You've got to learn to accept that not everyone is going to know the real you. But what is important is that the people who work for you know the real you, and that they can see that you are consistent and can be trusted to be stable in tough times, and you're not going to overly react and emotionally react over here, and that you'll do what you say you're going to do. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, that relationship with the media is something that obviously it becomes, as you become the CEO, I guess, it becomes more important. Or does it, or is it something that you have to worry about or think about?
I think it does become important, because I think it's important that you are willing to step up and put the plan of the organisation or some face to the organisation and defend the organisation or explain our strategy. So I think that's important. I think you can't. We get the press clippings every day. We go through them obviously, but I think you can't fixate, because people don't always understand it.
But you only ever get a soundbite. Like if there's a big announcement, it's on the 9 o'clock news or the 6 o'clock news, and it's a split second. Or you can sit down for an hour with a print journalist and they'll write 1,200 words, and you'll have said 25,000 words, and they're picking out the 1,200 that is going to make the most interesting stuff. But
I still think you have to do it. I think you have to be brave enough to put yourself out there, but I think you can't obsess about it, and it is what it is. I think if you're true to yourself, you know what you're doing, you're doing it for the right reasons, then you just do it. I think, because I think one of the problems I would have felt when I first joined so Vodafone was, flying, global company, tons of confidence. When I went into Aircom, then, I just thought people had lost their confidence. They'd be knocked around and changes of owners and all this good stuff. And people didn't believe they could win. And, you know, that's saying if you don't believe you can win, you can't win. And, you know, and confidence is built over time now. You know, I think we're getting back there. But also I think there was a bit of mentality because of that confidence that people would kind of hide, you know, and we wouldn't stick our heads above the parapet. I don't believe in that. I think you have to stand up and be counted, and you have to say your piece. And if people don't like it, they don't like it. You can't obsess about how they write it. But I think, you know, the answer is not to hide or not to say anything. I think you have to be brave, and you have to, you know, and if you're proud of what you're doing and what you're trying to do, I think you should be, you know, confident enough to say that. And, you know, people can write what they write.
So how do you go about restoring confidence in the company then? Because, you know, that's a separate issue really from the stuff that we've already talked about. It's like making sure that everybody has some sense that we can win.
Well, I think you start to, you know, do the things you say you were going to do. So, you know, again, you know, if you think post-examinership, we said we're going to do all these things, and we did them. And suddenly we've done them. And we were the first to launch 4G. And suddenly we have this fibre network and people are going onto it. So suddenly, you know, you can tell people that, but they have to see it. So I think you have to, you know, identify those things, say this is what we're going to do, and then you have to make sure you do them, you know, and don't be afraid to talk about them. And I think there was a sense as well that I see these roadshows around the country talking about fibre and explaining the benefits, not the technology, you know, whatever, you know, and people just say, you can't do that, Carolan, you can't go around, you know, people are going to give out to you, you know, because they don't have it, or, you know, Jared doesn't have it, Stuart has it. That is not a good reason for not going. I know Jared doesn't have it because we've only done 1.6 and there's 2.4 million homes in the company. But that is not a good reason for me hiding back in HSQ and not going out and sharing our plans with people, you know. And like, so, you know, you make your plans, you do what you say you're going to do, and you have the confidence to go out and tell people. And yeah, everybody doesn't like it. I had a very interesting interaction with some Cavan farmers there a few months ago, and one of them told me, now he lives in the middle of nowhere. I went into Google Maps, like, honestly, fibre, I don't know, but he said I said he gave me quite a hard time. It was fine. I was well able to defend myself. But I was quoting Anthony Daly. He always used to say to me that you never go into battle without red meat in your belly. Like the backs would be all having rashes and sausages before an all-out final, and the forwards would be there with their muesli. So I quoted Anthony as your man. I said, I wish I'd stopped for like a sausage roll on the way down here. The time he gave me, and he said, you won't believe it, I'm a pig farmer. If you ever get me fibre, you'll get the best pork you've ever had, or whatever. But I think getting out there and telling your story and being brave enough to do it is important, and whatever, you know, and defending your position, you know. Yeah,
because it gives you credibility.
It does, yeah.
If you disappear, they'll continue to say the same stuff anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
If you actually say, hang on a second.
Yeah, and maybe an odd time they might write about, you know, what you're saying, or they'll take on your point of view. I've never regretted doing any of those things, even when it's got a bit testy. I've never regretted putting myself out there.
That was the very word that went through my mind then. You know, as a leader, you have to have a point of view. Now, not everyone's going to agree with it, but you have to have a point of view, and you've got to be able to, you know, articulate it and defend it.
Defend it, yeah.
And one of the key things I think about going into a leadership position is you have to have clarity of your point of view before you get into the leadership position. So in a coaching world, you know, that's like going into a team without being clear on the game plan that you'd like to, the way you'd like to see the game played, or your off-field philosophy about how you see the values of the organisation. So clarity on your point of view, having a point of view and clarity on it before you step into a leadership position is fundamental, I think. And then, let's say, this is it, this is where we're going, and, you know, there's so many similarities with what Carolan said, you know, team loan confidence, you know, with England, or even Leinster to a certain extent, you know, and I remember coming in saying, I think we can win the European Cup, and I remember them all looking at me to say, we've just lost against Connacht in the final, we didn't do so well in Europe last year, you know, but then you say, this is what we're going to do, and look at the group here, and look at the international caps we've got in the group, and you say, I absolutely 100% believe we can do it, and then slowly things begin to change and people begin to believe in what you're saying.
It's not an overnight process, obviously.
No.
Oh, no. And certainly with England, you know, going back to the sort of the media as well, you know, the gap between ourselves and the media had grown hugely, and I tried to narrow that gap, even though a lot of the criticism was to come my way. I don't regret doing that, because you know, we had some off-the-record briefings, not with any one particular media outlet, so I didn't play favourites. Everyone came in, this is what we're trying to do, this is how we're trying to play the game, and this is how we'll build it off the field. And the media really appreciated that insight and the ability to have the debate, you know, off the record. And then, obviously, I was then judged on the record, you know, by the quality of the results and the performances. And I think, you know, it allowed me to use the media to get my message across to a grassroots rugby fan, to, you know, the community game about what we were trying to achieve. And I had to put myself out there, you know, as Carolan has just said. The bit I do wish in hindsight I'd done differently is when the World Cup finished. and there was a period between the final game, the Uruguay game, and the review starting. And it was about 5 weeks, and I was told not to engage with the media because it would add more oxygen to the story. In the meantime, there were a whole load of conspiracy theories that grew that I never addressed. And it wasn't, anyone's reputation getting damaged, well, everyone's reputation getting damaged, but mine was part of that, and I felt I could have defended the organisation, defended the team, defended the players, and said, actually, that's not true. But I wasn't allowed to, and maybe I should just be more forceful and said, listen, I'm doing a press conference, whether you like it or not. And so then perception becomes reality. And you've got no right to reply to some of the things that have been said, and in hindsight, I should have handled that differently.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly the same thing. People will be annoyed, but if you go out and talk to them and say, well, this is what we were trying to do, then at least they have the information and go, well, it seems like a sensible decision that you're making there.
And actually, and not just saying it because we're here in a radio station, but actually I find the radio the best medium for that, because the print media, what would happen is you would say, you'd say your 20,000 words and they'd take the whatever 1,000 to suit the agenda that they wanted to portray. Whereas if you're out on the radio or whatever, TV less so because it's shorter timeline, then you can get your point of view across and people hear it from your voice rather than through
there's context.
But rather than through the journalist's opinion or the agenda of the particular newspaper or whatever. So
I think as well that people respond to people, and I've never, even in a testy, maybe hostile environment when we've gone in, and it's not like we've been able to solve everyone's problems when we're in there. Like, we don't have a magic wand. But I think people have always left, in better shape than they arrived, better informed. There's human people who obviously care about what they're doing. They haven't done everything yet.
Yeah.
And they've actually, they've come down here on a wet Monday afternoon to talk to us about it. So I've never felt that was, ever a bad use of time or a bad use of engagement.
It turns out you're on the same side.
Yeah, absolutely. We're trying to do the same things. You don't think I'm doing it fast enough. You wish I'd do your house first and all that good stuff. But, I always left feeling that was a good thing to do, no matter how many tough questions we got.
There was one last bit that I just wanted to bring up with you. You talked about coming from Coolock and from a family that didn't have a tradition of sending kids to third level. What do we as a country need to do more for people who are coming through the system? My wife teaches in Coolock, and she says there's no difference between the kids who are there and the kids 5 miles down the road, but the number who go to school, who end up going to college in one versus the other is massive.
So it's huge. I mean, that's funny. I was thinking about this because I was thinking about today, and when I grew up, even though my parents didn't have that background, but I do remember my mother, and I wouldn't consider her a particularly confident person, but she used to say to all of us, you're as good as everybody and better than most. So that she was always kind of instilling that in us in terms of and you can kind of do it. And from an early age, when I said I wanted to go to university, they got in behind me to do that. They may have not done it themselves or knew necessarily at the time how to necessarily go about it, but they backed me. And the school as well supported that ambition and supported them in helping me realise that ambition. So I think there's a lot of work with that whole group. The parents, the parents are key, and the school is key. And how do you bring that together? Because I had an next door neighbour, and she was smarter than me, and the teachers could see that, but it didn't have the same backup in terms of parents. And the teachers had before there was ever an after school homework club, they had that all set up for her to try and kind of keep her going, but it failed because it was only one leg of the stool. It wasn't enough on its own. So I think I think it is that coming together of parents and teachers around that child and that child's ambition. But the other thing I think is today we're obsessed with university, and kids go to university who would be much better off becoming an electrician or a plumber, and I think that's parents. There's this thing about my son's gone to college as opposed to my son's whatever, and we all need to rethink about it, because it's about, as it was for me, matching my skills with the right thing.
Whatever journey it is to get.
And whatever journey is for you is the journey for you. My oldest son wants to be a chef. So I think parents have to wake up to that. But I think to get the kids from some of those areas, more of them participating, it is that the school and the parents together, and also I think this idea that if I can do it, they can do it. This role model of
I was about to say the role models in I really hate the idea of sports people being role models, because actually that's a skill that they have that they've done for millions and millions of hours. But actually in real life, role models who have come through systems are far more valuable to people.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely true, because we all like to say she's not that different to me. He's not that different to me. If he could do it, we had the Silver Surfers in Air last week, and a 99-year-old man won an award because he delivers Meals on Wheels for the elderly in his community. I kid you not. He's 99. But we were saying, a load of them left and said, we're going to put in for awards next year because, if he can do it, I can do it. And it's that whole idea, of someone to kind of follow. And we get a lot of that feedback when we do talk on women's issues or whatever, because there's less, I suppose, senior leader, commercial role models in the female space than there are, so I think women really like to see that because, again, they look and say, well, that's a path I could potentially follow.
Yeah. Do you feel that's the importance of role models? Do you feel like you become a role model as you go along?
Yeah, I mean, if I could wave a magic wand, what would I like to do most? It would be to help educate the educational system and people involved in education, to give people, that was the best bit of teaching. The best bit, well, there was loads of great bits of teaching, but the bits that I really, really enjoyed was taking the kid who was from a working class background, from a tough estate, and trying to send them on the right path. I remember I had one lad, Matty Ray, and he was 14, 15, and he was just beginning to veer off the wrong path. And, he was beginning to truant from school and not come in and everything else. And I said to him, listen, Matty, you're a brilliant rugby player and you could help me coach this 12 team of under-12s. Why don't you come and help me down on it? And then he did this and this and this, and then he got an apprenticeship as an electrician and an academy scholarship agreement at the local rugby league team, and suddenly his life went in that direction. And I remember Matty Ray absolutely to a T now, and I saw a photo on Facebook the other day. I've not seen or heard of him. He's there. He lives in Sydney. Wife, 2 kids. I'm thinking, brilliant.
Yeah.
And that's the bit I want to do. So if you can use your influence, because of the opportunities that you've had to try and inspire other people to go down this route, that's the true value of getting to a leadership position. And
don't be afraid to ask for help. That was the other great bit of advice I saw you give.
Oh, absolutely. Nobody I've ever asked for help has said no to me. And, I've had coaches and mentors. I think people generally are happy to help and, are flattered by the fact that someone thinks they've something to add, and generally they absolutely step up.
Yeah, good stuff. This was great. Thanks very much for sharing all of that with us today. It was absolutely brilliant. So that's this week's Leaders' Questions with Stuart Lancaster. We'll be back next week with another one. Thanks.
Thanks for listening today. This podcast was brought to you by Cisco Systems and Exertis Ireland. You need to be moving your network to a Cisco SD-WAN network. Don't believe us? Cisco SD-WAN can deliver a reduction of over 50% in WAN costs. Visit intelligentIT.ie.
Leaders' Questions. Thanks to Cisco Systems and Exertis Ireland, providing a secure, intelligent platform for digital business. Visit intelligentIT.ie.